Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 709 of Longbox Heroes, the Lamborghini of comic book podcasts. Joe and Todd here. Todd, hello. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Joe.
Yes. We were talking off air, and what was the code that you had? There was MBA, FBI.
Right. R&B for a little, reggae and blues.
The East Coast family. I was trying to write everything down to keep track of all your wheelings and dealings, you know?
I can't even keep track of my wheelings and dealings.
Yes, but if you listen to After Dark, when you listen to After Dark, if you don't pay for the Patreon, when you listen to After Dark and then listen to this, as I am extending the shelf life of Previewing the Past, Todd is working diligently to find more and more movies that have slipped through the cracks for us to do comic book oddities over on the Patreon. So
I'm going to say if everything falls through the cracks eventually, I'll always do comic book oddities with you. We will always have that Patreon show at least. Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at it. I'm going to die. I'm going to die at the microphone talking about crappy comic book movies. He died the way he wanted to, horribly.
And talking about the current goings-on in the world of comic books, which is this show, right?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So we have a bunch of news, a long-awaited thing. Again, I don't even know if it would be a story or a book, but it's a thing. Is finally getting reprinted over at DC. Oni Press is given a hardcore press, pun intended, to their upcoming horror stuff. Marvel is letting their initiatives leak out there and how their publishing plans are going to be going. Marvel also, part of their publishing plan, is working diligently to get specifically Todd and myself to read X-Men comics.
Yes, sir.
And the bad part about it is, it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, Wither Loki Gator. Wither. Wither. Conventions this week, of course. We have what we read from this past week, which would be Deadpool Wolverine World War III #1, Blood Brothers Mother #1. What we're looking forward to coming out this week, our ongoing reread of Gail Simone's Secret Six, and Todd and Joe have issues. Our Walk Down Lois Lane with a little bit of a detour from our good friend Beckie, and possibly other things as well.
Right.
It's always those other things.
It should be a short show, Joe.
Well, let's get rolling here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to our good friend Mark Cole, who gave us this news story before it hit all the usual news outlets. But the DC Comics Style Guide from the early 80s by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez is getting reprinted as an oversized hardcover, as a something, this upcoming August. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and the thing was, it wasn't ever sold in stores. That was only given to creators. So this will be the first time that people will be able to buy them. Like, that was only in a 3-ring binder that DC made, with their beautiful 3-ring binders with loose leaf pages that were all the style guides for the characters. They would be the turnarounds, and it would be front, back, side, and then like action poses. And this is what the character was supposed to look like. This is, the definitive version of these characters for merchandise and reference for the comics. And they never saw the light of day for people. They kind of trickled out there. People saw them. And there was like a movement to get these printed or reprinted in some form, because when they would show up on eBay, like, they would go for mucho, like they would go for many Portugal dollars, you know what I mean, to get them. But, I always wanted one. I tried to bid on one once, and it went for like $2,000, and when it was over. So if they're doing these whatever they're doing in a hardcover, in a heartbeat, I'm buying one.
Right, and DC, of course, is giving it the full court press, as well as they're doing a bunch of variant covers that month for a bunch of the different characters: Batman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Shazam, Superman, Flash, and Wonder Woman, where the variant covers are going to be wraparound images of what the style guide pages for those characters were. And again, we say this, 1982, if you bought DC merchandise prior to New 52 and good DC merchandise after New 52, it was probably based off these specific designs.
Oh, most definitely. And we'll take out crappy DC cinematic universe stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, his stuff. Like when I bought the DC role playing game, and like you would get cards and little pieces in there with the characters, and it was all that art from him. You know what I mean? It's all what you would see, and it was on lunch boxes and T-shirts and whatever. And I like to think that it's all coming back with a lot of like the modern comics, like Green Lantern back in the classic costume and some others. Like they're reverting to like what obviously works, you know?
Right. And I think we even just talked last week. Jose had come up or it might have been on the Patreon show. Like everything gets muddled when we record so much, that Jose actually has very little printed output of serialized comics,
right?
Because he did so much stuff for this, but this is such a big piece of everything that there's no single issues or whatever it is. But as Todd mentioned, it's everything from like puffy stickers to lunch boxes to shirts and everything else like that. So hopefully Jose's getting a little check for this, right?
I hope so. I know I might, try to get it signed by him at a show. You know what I mean? I know a guy who knows a guy, so
yeah. So I know this is one that you and I had talked about off air recently. We talked about on air when it first got announced. But Oni Press is working real hard to let you, the reader, and if there's any retailers out there as well, we're also readers, hopefully, know that they are bringing back the EC Comics horror stuff.
Right.
They are doing big full-page ads. They're doing the little thing that you rip out of the book and give to your retailer or print out where it says like, I demand to add this to my list, or it says on the thing, put every damned EC comic on my pull list,
Right. They're going to be.
Go ahead.
Aren't those going to be shrink wrap bundles of pre-order postcards?
Right. Those are pre-order postcards for the retailers. And then the first 3 issues of the first one, Epitaphs from the Abyss, the first 3 issues of it are going to be fully returnable, regardless of how many you, the retailer, purchase. Right. So, no limits on that. Obviously, I think there's probably variant covers and incentive covers. Those probably don't make the cutoff. Mm-hmm. But it very much feels as though they feel strongly about the pickup of this property, and they are putting as much of their weight behind it as they possibly can.
Yes, I love those postcards.
Yeah.
Like you said, like put every damn DC on my list. And then they like that they have the useful information area. It's like, hey, here's your name, here's your email, here's your phone number for to order these things. And then they also ask for your biggest fear, which I'm not giving them because I think they'll use it against me, Joe.
So that's really cool that they're doing this. They're on my list regardless. I don't need postcards or constant reminders, but I'm definitely in the minority when it comes to those sort of things, right?
Joe, these are the first books to go into my Samsung Note app that I'm putting for books to look for when I click find on page in the diamond previews.
That sounds like a very good system to be working with.
That's the way I'm doing. This is the first one. I was like, I know what months they're coming out, so I'm putting one like that's coming out in July. It's almost like I'm trying to remember what I'm doing.
Yeah. One of the other books that I'm sure will be in that Samsung Notes app, not a sponsor, is going to be the upcoming Mark Russell, Bob Quinn book at Marvel.
Yes, it is.
But the thing that's suspect about this is that it's an X book that they're doing at Marvel.
Another one I have to buy.
So it is the new X Factor book. It is going to have Havoc in it, who is very much associated with X Factor.
Mm-hmm.
The Peter David run, and then, of course, Angel, who was in there in the original run from the mid-'80s when the main 5 original X-Men moved out of Uncanny over to this book. But the fact that it's going to be dealing with, like, government agencies and all sorts of stuff like that, I can't think of a better writer than Mark Russell for something like this.
Right.
He just did one of there was like 3 stories, I think, and the reason we're not going to talk too much about it. But it was Mark Russell and Stephen Pugh who did the Kyle Stark's Peacemaker book.
Right.
It was Mark Russell, Stephen Pugh, who did a Perry White running for office. He's running for mayor or governor or whatever he's running for in Metropolis. And it was Mark Russell, and it was so good.
I would say it was more of a Bibbo story helping out Perry White. But I'm with you. I'm 100% with you because it had lots of heart, which is what's going on in the Superman books lately.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. And this creative team did a 4 or 5 issue mini of Lone Ranger and Tonto that I absolutely loved, which might have been what in the early days put Mark Russell on the map for me, even before like Wonder Twins and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, seeing them together and the fact that they're involved in a government agency obviously is fantastic, which was the original premise, I believe, is that they were hunting mutants for the government. But
right, it was under the guise that they were hunting mutants, but they were actually saving them, yes.
Right. So I kind of want to see where all this is going. And that all throws me into, like, obviously the Gail Simone X-Men. And it's like, what other X book are they going to put out there that is going to make me buy it in the next month or so that I have to put on my little list and I'm sorry, it's a Google Note app. But so we'll see. I love it. But go ahead.
So will Marvel, by the end of the calendar year 2024, get a 3rd X book onto our pull lists?
Is 2 the over-under for us?
I would have to say 2 is the over-under for both of us, yes.
I'm going to say it's probably going to be the over. They're going to find a way. Because I ended up adding the free comic book day Blood Hunt free comic book for me. Because there's a Gail Simone original story in that.
Yeah.
So I had to pick that up. And then did you know that they gave out Blood Hunt fake vampire teeth?
No! Oh my goodness!
So I'm at the shop the other day and Beckie's there. I'm like, okay, do you have any of these left? She's like, I don't know what we have. And I was like, okay, well, can you get me the X-Men one? Because I want it. Because I didn't know there was a Gail Simone story. I saw that DJ, our good buddy DJ, had tweeted out about it. And I was like, did you get any of the like, I heard that there was fake teeth, like vampire teeth. And she's like, yeah, you want one? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a big expert. She's like, I tell you, we got a couple. And it comes in a little, like, sealed packet. And they're, like, the fake teeth that you put in your mouth and you bend them closed. You know what I mean? And they're all red. And it comes with a little, like, Blood Hunt, like, tag in it. And I was like, you know what? I'm glad she gave me one of these, even though it's because I have X-Men seeds that I'm never going to plant. Do you remember when those came out?
Yes.
And I have X-Men like Krakoa, like a card, like a code thing. I'm like, I have all this X stuff that I'm never going to use. But now that I'm an X-Men fan, I need it.
For sure. But again, let's hope that DC is able to just keep this or DC Marvel is able to keep this at 2 X books. I don't know if my heart can handle 3.
Or my wallet.
Yeah. But, as we mentioned at the top of the show, of course, Marvel has laid out a lot more of their plannings of what they're hoping to do to get more readers, to increase stuff. They did, Dan Buckley did an interview with ICV2 recently, and there was discussions in regards to pitches from creators, and also for getting folks into comic book stores. Now, in the past, and this is, something that plagued both companies, where a new book would come out and you would get on top of it, and then by the time that, you're reading issue 2, it's canceled by the solicitation for issue 5. So it's tough to kind of sort of get into something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Marvel has stated, and Buckley has stated, that they're hoping that they are going to be able to approve some of these newer series, newer creator teams, newer concepts for minimally 10 issues at a clip, as opposed to 5 or 6, sometimes less, in the hopes that they're giving these titles a little bit more room to breathe to find that audience before they ended up getting canceled 2 months in.
Yep.
Which I think is great. I love that idea. You know, it really stinks as a fan, as a creator, as everything, when you find that book that, like, you know, not Batman does not speak to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is we're talking Marvel, but I'll never forget the Great 10 miniseries over at DC, which was a 10-issue miniseries about each member of the Great 10 that was canceled with issue 9 for low sales, right?
Right.
Would it have killed them to put out that 10th issue? No. Did they put out that 10th issue? No.
Right. But to be fair for DC, they stuck with titles more than Marvel ever did.
That's true.
I mean,
I just like to bring up that Great 10 one all the time.
I know you do, but I'm like there were people like Starman, like books like Starman and Sandman, which obviously they're not the vibe that Marvel kind of had at that time. They would have never survived at Marvel. And I could list like tons of other that are media darlings that we love, where like DC had a longer leash on their books. Maybe not so much today, but I always give them credit. And I like this idea for Marvel to try it. But because I think there's a lot of stuff that got canned by Marvel before it was time. It was good and blah blah blah. So I like this idea. I at least give them credit for it.
Right. And the other thing that Marvel is looking to do, at least they're addressing it publicly, talking about it, that they have a plan, that, you know, they're looking at the types of people that go and get their books at their local comic book store once a month, 2 times a month, whatever it is. They're looking to try to do something, create an initiative to incentivize somehow getting people to go to the comic book store every week. Now, that's not a problem for me or for you. I'm there every week. You're there every week.
I'm there, barring heart attack. I'm there.
But obviously Marvel, like, looking at that as an issue, something that they need to address, something that they need to change. As someone who goes and gets their books every week, Todd, obviously you and I, it's habit. But can you think of what Marvel could do? Do you have an idea of what it could be?
I would say fun pizza parties. And I would go. Granted, that might lead on the heart attack to make me miss. But I don't know. I think it could be, and it would scare me if they took a page out of that company we don't like to mention that was once a donut company for a while, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Where their ideas are not good, maybe. I could see them doing like a loyalty program. That, to me, would be a great idea. Like, if you come in and get your books every week, it's like the cup of coffee. Like, you come in for a month and we give you this limited edition promo comic that you can only get by coming in each week and picking up your books. I think that would be a great idea to incentivize people coming in every week.
So I'm with you. That's kind of sort of where I was thinking, right? Where one thing that I was thinking was, it has to be something that they set up with the retailers, and you do a variant cover. A variant cover that you could only get the week the book that comes, the week that the book comes out, like that Wednesday to Tuesday, right? And the retailer has to do a little bit of legwork on it and say, like, okay, well, let's just use Amazing Spider-Man as our gauge, right? And I'm just making up numbers out of thin air. Our local store gets 200 copies of Amazing Spider-Man every week. Of those 200, 100 of them are on a weekly poll, on somebody's poll list. Mm-hmm. Of those 100, 50 of those are people that come in the first week to pick it up. Okay? So Marvel's going to send you, for those 50 people, a variant cover that you could only get that week. Right?
Right.
Maybe they give you 1 extra. Maybe they give you 5 extra for the person that comes in and says, I want that cover. So I'm going to come and get my books. You do it as maybe like a connecting cover for those books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you want the full image. That's what it is. Because there's physical ways that they could do it. And I think there's easier digital ways that you could do it, which goes along the way that you're doing it. You know, obviously the Marvel books have the redeem codes in them, but there's like a little sticker that you have to pull off them. But that's not for all of them. It's real weird, and I wish I knew why Marvel chose the books that they do, because they don't even do the same books every month. Like, just as an example, let's say She-Hulk. The current She-Hulk run is currently at 13 issues, the relaunch, right? The renumbering at number 1, okay? Of those 13 issues, 8 of them was a peel-off redeem code. The other 5, you had to take a picture of the cover and upload it to Marvel's site to prove that you got it, right?
Now, my question to you is, okay, so you have, I'm just using numbers. You said 8 and 5, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Were they like the first 8 were the one version? So it would be like 1 month this way, the next month a different way, the next month the original way twice in a row.
Yep.
Kind of a deal. It was haphazard is the word I'm looking for.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's no rhyme or reason to that, but I think if there's a way, as you say, Marvel does a loyalty program. You buy the books that come out that week. You take your picture and you upload it to a site, and it builds up like points or something, right? And like, you know, this week, and we're just gonna look at the list of books. Like Captain America comes out this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get Captain America every week. I take my picture, I upload it to the site, it attaches to my account. I do that for the entirety of the Captain America run, or I do that for 5 books a week, or 7 books a week, or whatever it is. There's a tiered thing where, like, okay, well, you did this for every single issue of Captain America that we had as part of this program. You could redeem it for X. Right. Now, what X is another story, but I definitely think that there is a digital way to do these sort of things, and obviously there has to be a way that you're not just going to the store, taking a picture of the book on the shelf and sending it in, right?
You beat me to it. So
yeah. But so I'm not an idea guy, but that's why we're brainstorming this idea. Hopefully that somebody at Marvel listens to this and they get inspiration for whatever their plan is going to be.
What I would do is like to add on to my idea. First of all, it can't be digital because digital is like giving away air. People won't care. What will get people in the store? Like, oh, if I miss a week, I don't get my digital whatever. So I think it has to be a physical copy because that's what people want, because that's going to be worth money, blah, blah, blah. But what you should do is, instead of like the coffee card, like I'm saying, if you want to do nostalgia, do a bit where it's the Marvel stamp program, and you get the stamp book. And what would make not only people come in, but buy multiple copies is this is something that this is like, that's going to mess up the book. Do you know what I mean? Like even if it's not ripping the book apart, but like the digital thing where you peel it off, you put that in. Now that's sticky again, and it has a Captain America, it has a man thing on it, it has whatever, and they give you the stamp booklet, and you're like, all right, now you put that in there, and each week you come in, there'll be the same ones in all the Marvel books. As long as you buy one book, you're good. You put it in there, and then once you fill up a page, like the green stamp system from like if you're an old like us, you can redeem, and it would make people, I don't know, buy multiple maybe, because the thing they have to turn in, they want to keep one, and that makes you buy multiple copies, and then you turn it in for a physical thing. And that's why I say you have to do it over multiple weeks, because one issue a week would be too much money for Marvel to give away. You know what I mean? Like we could stretch this out by doing this once a month with these. And if you get what I'm kind of saying, because they don't want to just do it a lot and give stuff away every week, blah, blah, blah. Like the empty suits are counting the pennies, Joe.
Right. I definitely think it should be something. I like this, bringing back the stamp program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something good for us olds, but I think what they're trying to do. So how about this? Because they're also trying to bring, like, I assume, you and I are not the problem. It's trying to get like younger readers to come in every week, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to once a month. So what if you do the gimmick with the stamp, but you get the option to get the physical stamp or the digital stamp, or both, and you have your physical stamp booklet, and then you have your digital stamp booklet as like an app or something on your phone, right?
Right.
And that's like a way for you to keep track of what stamps that you have and what ones that you need, or whatever ones it is. And then if you connect it to whatever other Marvel stuff that's out there, whether it be the Marvel Insider Program, people out there play Marvel Snap, people out there play Marvel Puzzle Quest. Obviously, you're going a little bit deeper, but I think there's also a room for synergy amongst other Marvel things. Even if you want to do a physical thing, you get a bunch of people that do a bunch of stamps, and there's a Funko Pop that you could only get if you're part of the Marvel Stamp Program, and you only get those stamps by going to the store the week that those books come out to get the stamp. You fill up the book, and that's the way that you get the Funko Pop, or the Marvel Legends figure, or the whatever it is.
Right. And I'm fine with that, and recording it digitally is great, but giving away anything digital is, like, to me,
yes,
fights the what you're trying to do. Because if you're doing anything digitally where it's like, all right, this does what my digital books, that counterproductive to getting, because you want the people who want to buy the books to come in. So digital stuff is great to help out, but you want people to come in, because who's going to come into a comic shop to buy digital things, if that makes any sense? I just look at it as there's some good ideas there to, like, tie it to digital stuff, but I think it definitely has to be
a physical component to it. Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
It has to be a physical item that they will get.
Yeah. More on this as it develops. How about that?
And pizza.
And pizza parties.
Mm-hmm.
Last but not least, Todd brought this story to my attention. Apparently the alligator that was the inspiration for Alligator Loki in the Loki TV show was stolen from its owner.
Yep.
And released back into the wild. And reading over the story, the person who owned it put it up on their Facebook page, the whole thing. And they mentioned that this alligator, Wally, was their emotional support alligator.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I have no room to throw any stones because I've never introduced you to Gilligan, my emotional support pelican.
Mm-hmm.
But
I hope
I'm not sure how much emotional support that alligator might be giving this person, but who am I to judge, right?
All right, but the part that is like, somebody reported it, I guess, and it got grabbed by the game commission or whatever, and it got released with a bunch of alligators, like that, wherever. Maybe there were alligators that end up in pools, whatever. It's like, we got to release them back out so they're not hurting anybody. And they're trying to figure out a way to find that Wally alligator, and I'm like, it's gone. All right, like, it's gone, and you don't want to accidentally, like, all right, I don't believe that alligator has become accustomed to you and is now a docile pet, but say he is, like, for the sake of argument, that is true. What if you get the wrong one that's not trained, Joe? And it's going to bite your face off. Like, I understand if it was my dog or whatever, I would be wrecked. But I think that ship has sailed, and maybe alligators shouldn't be support animals. I'm sorry. I'll go out on that limb and be the bad guy. Put the black hat on me. I don't care. I'm just a little wary about this, Joe. But I hope Wally does well in the swamp.
Yes, I think. And again, I don't know nothing about no alligators. Hopefully this person finds a new emotional support animal, and they get all the emotional support they need. Right?
Would you be willing to give up your pelican?
I'm really attached to him. I don't know.
Gotcha. I'm gonna come over and feed him fish.
Okay.
Long John Silver's fish.
Oh, those are the kind he likes.
Yeah.
You don't get around much. He's a big, yeah.
Yep, extra
He
charge.
eats what I eat, so again, he's gonna die soon.
Is he of sizable carriage? This pelican
Yes.
can't fly no more. He's a new version of a flightless bird, Joe.
Not by choice, no.
And not by evolution.
No, not by that either.
Mm-hmm.
So we got conventions this weekend. One notable one is the Muncie Comic Book Con in Muncie, Indiana. Some great artists are going to be there. Chris Sprouse is going to be there, and friend of the show, writer, artist extraordinaire Kyle Starks is going to be there.
Their motto should be Muncie for funsies.
No, it shouldn't.
Okay.
But I will say, I want to just mention this, though, in regards to Kyle Starks. This is no fault of his own, but his recent original graphic novel, Karate Prom, is out this week.
Right.
Bookstores only.
Yeah, I would have bought it at the comic shop if it was there.
I think it comes out to comic shops in like this month, but bookstores got it first with the publisher that he went with. They did the bookstore initiative first, which is fine. I'm glad his stuff is getting out there to a much wider audience.
Yep.
But I want it now.
I do want to know. And I'm just saying boo, but I'm not booing Kyle Starks. I'm booing the publisher. In no way, shape, or form am I booing Kyle Starks. I'm booing the publisher.
That's right. Let's make that clear. So if you're in the greater Indiana area, of course, we do have the link to the convention in the show notes, along with information about the soon-to-be-named network at soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. I think just regular soon-to-be-named-network.com is gone forever. But anytime any of the shows go live, you could certainly find them at their own individual websites. You can find them on whatever podcatcher of choice that you're using, or the one-stop shop for all of the shows, soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com, and that includes this show that you're listening to right now, Longbox Heroes, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Arguments, We Need Wrestling, Final Wrestling Place, At Odds with Wrestling, Wings on Wings, Porch Talk, and I think that's it these days.
Yep. I hear there's been a big shakeup on At Odds.
Oh boy! Again, there's been a lot of paperwork that I talked on After Dark about paperwork. It was paperwork that I had to do this past week. It was a surprise draft. It's a lot of things going on. It's going to be a very interesting At Odds this week as I'm winking into the microphone.
I can't wait to get to it after I listen to all the other ones you did.
We actually over on At Odds on apropos of nothing. We're coming up on the 5-year, like it's still a couple months away, but we're coming up on 5 years of doing that show.
Call me when it's 10.
All right. I'm going to give you 4 weeks. So we have links to some of our other friends and some of the other stuff that they're up to in and around the internet. You can go check out our friend Mike Sterling's blog over at progressiveruin.com. You can go check out our friend Kevin's blog over at helionsteam.com. You can go check out Rick Williams' The Chop Shop at freekaratechops.storeenvy.com. You can go check out Jason Sandberg's Jupiter at his Indiegogo page, or Chris Runt's Battle Monsters at his site, fortressofcomicnews.com. You can go check out our friend Davey of the band Cave People's self-published comics over at cavedomaincomics.com. Fund his next tattoo.
Is that what he wants to be known for? Tattoos?
Apparently. And if you do not have a comic book store in your area, or you do not have a good comic book store in your area, let our store be your store. Comics on the Green. We have the Facebook page listed there. They just had a very successful, very eventful free comic book day this past weekend. Hopefully you got a chance to get out there and press the flesh at your local store. Listener of the show, Jesse, was actually at his local store, and Gail Simone was there.
Lucky dog.
Yeah, and he posted the pictures up and on the Facebook page, and he, he mentioned to her that he had gotten to some of her stuff from us talking about Secret Six all the way back when, and he said that, like, she was great. She, was obviously we don't need to tell you that Gail Simone was great, but like he has like 3 little children and he took them and they had a blast. So, it was really cool. Anytime there's a creator at your local store, be sure to get out there. I don't think Tom was at our store this past weekend, was he?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. I definitely would have made it down if he was there.
Yeah, he's got deadlines.
Yep.
Not that Gail doesn't, but, Tom's a fix-it man,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could sign up for their mail order subscription service, get your books mailed to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Sorry, it does not qualify for the stamp program that Todd and I are devising for Marvel. But there's a chance that you can get a sketch on the package from our good friend Beckie, who we're going to turn things over to right now for her walk down Lois Lane.
Welcome back. So television has often been cited as the reason comics began their decline in popularity. So if you're a comic company, what do you do about it? Well, you write comics about television, of course. DC had Roy Raymond's TV Detective, Charlton had TV Teens, and Marvel had today's comic I want to talk about. In 1955, some guy you haven't heard of named Stan Lee wrote a comic called Television. Its artist was Al Hartley. He's the artist of Linda Carter's Student Nurse, and one of the men responsible for maintaining that classic Archie look. Stan had a habit of writing comedies with Archie artists. Another example is My Friend Irma with Dan DiCarlo. That is a personal favorite of mine, and I collect those. Television debuted in April of 1955. The story is about a beautiful blonde named Della who wants to be in TV, auditions, and immediately replaces their headliner Flame Fancy. Other characters were publicity man Gabby Gimmick, producer J.P. Kilowatt, and the director Marvin Wreck, aka Nervous Wreck. The comic is legitimately hilarious. It has the fun humor of Irma or Archie and the later Millies, and there's a running gag about pretzels I don't quite understand, but I wasn't alive in 1955. The comic name-dropped famous TV people like Bob Hope and Zsa Zsa Gabor, and Al would often make the main characters look like famous actors to sell Stan's imitation jokes, or draw celebrities in their live studio audience. The comic ran for 3 issues. It didn't even make it to the end of 1955. Issue number 4 became Patty Powers instead. It's a similar concept, but just movies, because that was the more prestigious medium. Patty kept with Stan and Al working on it, and she's literally just a Della clone, and it's the exact same formula, just movies. Della faded into obscurity until a comic shop worker and her boss saw the comic on Heritage, didn't know what it was. She looked into it and decided it would be fun to talk about on this week's episode. So if you want to find Della out there, she's there, but pricey. And I can't actually find any official reprints anywhere for you guys. I did read the issues online myself, and I really enjoyed them. They made me laugh out loud. Patty Powers are issues 4 through 7 if you want to be a completionist. They are also pricey and much harder to find. So join me next week, and we'll go back to some Lois.
Thank you very much, Beckie, for your contributions. Not so much Lois Lane, but I always love hearing about pre-Marvel superhero Stan Lee stuff.
Right. I haven't heard of him until she just brought him up, like she said. So.
But I love the idea that they're like, how could we get kids to read our comic books instead of watching television? I know, we'll make comic books about television, and then immediately pivot that nobody's watching television. We're movies, the pictures, that's where the money is, and then that fails too.
Right, and then it was romance comics about video games, Joe, I think. Moving on, would have been great. And I will say, I really want to know what the ongoing pretzel gag in these 3 comics were.
Okay.
And because she's like, yeah, there's like, they kept bringing up pretzels, and I'm like, oh, you mean Whitey Whackers? So I'm all in. I just think that's funny that there's some like 23 skidoo thing from the 50s that has to do with pretzels,
I'll have to get that issue and peruse it here for myself.
Me too.
All right. So again, thank you very much, Beckie. Of course, as always, let's get into what we read from this past week. Todd, where would you like to begin?
I'm going to start with the book that I was looking forward to most, which was The Blood Brothers' Mother, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Eduardo Rizzo. Basically, it's a Western, oversized issue, which I like. $8.99, just so you know, in case you're very interested. But from the creators who obviously did 100 Bullets, kind of, so you know it's good. This takes place in the Old West, and it's an interesting story in the way that it's told. It's apparently told by someone who's like, okay, this is my story, but to tell you my story, I have to begin with this story. And it's the story about a guy who's being released from a Mexican prison, and he's meeting up with his gang, kind of a deal. And obviously there's some bits where he has like beef with the warden of the prison, and that's probably not going to end well because they're like talking about seeing each other again. And the whole time, this character's asking the guys he rode with, like, where we're going. We're going to meet the people who helped us out. And he's like, okay, well, what about this woman? And he's like, well, she's married. He's like, really? And they end up going, and maybe the people that they, were with, this gang, aren't so nice. So he takes it upon himself to show them the wrongs that they've committed in a very brutal piece of artwork. If you're squeamish, this isn't the book for you. And then he's like, all right, now it's time to find the people that I'm looking for. And you end up finding out that it's this family of this woman, maybe, that he's been asked about, is married a preacher and has 3 kids, maybe from all different people. We're not sure. And he shows up and like, you're coming with me. Coming back in a couple of days, make right with whatever you got to do, but we're leaving. And the priest is like, nope. And maybe where it goes from there is not so well. And maybe the story is truly about the 3 kids that were in this family with the preacher, who now have to kind of go on a mission that I don't want to mention because I don't want to spoil too much. But this was a Western. I loved it. It was it was at Brian Azzarello, so it was brutal. It was a bit confusing, like I said, but I came around to understanding everything at the end because things were told weird. But the beautiful part of this is Eduardo's art is gorgeous in a very interesting choice of colors for the palette that they use. It's very soft for like a Western, but I absolutely love it and think it works. And as a big Jonah Hex fan, obviously, like the Jimmy Palmiotti, Justin Gray run was brutal. I think this might even be a smidge more brutal, but I was having like just goosebumps that I loved this book so much by the end. But that's to say it was tailor written for me. I guess. Did you read it, Joe?
So I read this. I enjoyed this, but I have, obviously I have discussions about it, then I have my concerns with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is put out by a new publisher that I'd never heard of before called Distillery, Dstlery, right?
Right.
So, it's a new, it's a new publisher coming out of the gates hot with a strong creative team on a book. This is how you get your name out there as a publisher. Through their website, directly through them, they have variant covers that you could also buy, that you could only get directly through them as a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have things that sound like NFTs but aren't quite NFTs.
Right.
It's like buying a digital version of a variant cover that you could only get that way, and then by ownership of that, it gives you license to read the comic. And I'm like, I don't like a lot of that reads, right? But whatever, I'm never going to buy it, but I'm sure they're trying to tap into a market, trying to find that next comic book reader, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I looked into like interviews with Azzarello and Riso about the book. I'm glad you brought up about the art, because this is Eduardo Riso experimenting with doing art in paint watercolors.
Right, and it shows.
It definitely shows, and it's just very funny, as my wife has recently this year got into watercolor paintings, and she watches all sorts of videos on them, and she's doing all these things, and like just by watching her, I'm learning how you're actually supposed to paint with watercolors, not the way that we were probably taught in like grade school, elementary school to paint with watercolors, right?
Right, keeping in the numbers kind of a deal.
It's so in my mind, as my wife is doing the things that she's learned from the videos and the courses and stuff that she's taken, and she's painting what she's painting, like, here's some flowers, and here's a dog, and here's this other stuff, right? And then I just take those, in my mind, I'm taking those same lessons that my wife has watched and I've overheard, and Eduardo Riso taking those same things and painting what he's painting.
Yeah, slightly different.
It's a little bit different. Now, the story, as you mentioned, is a little confusing because the narrative is, I don't want to say unclear, I don't want to say uneven, but it's definitely non-linear, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a book looking at the future solicitations on this, because again, I looked into it, I'm doing my due diligence. While it is a larger issue number 1, it's a book that's currently scheduled to only come out every other month.
Right.
Whereas I think because there's so much information that was laid out in this first issue, with at least 2 months in between the issues, it might be a little bit rough to like, okay, now I got to remember what happened. Like I might even need to reread number 1, right? Mm-hmm. So I could follow along with issue 2. I think, and again, who am I to say, but maybe if this was a complete story, they should have just waited and put it out as, 128 page, 150 whatever page graphic novel. Go the Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips route with this.
I agree, but I think it's harder to get your foot out there with a $30 hardcover or a less expensive soft cover. I mean, no knock on Brisso and Azzarello. I think, obviously the track record Brubaker has had is great. And he's just dialed in at Image, which is a brand that's tried and true now, where Distillery has been around for a year pretty much. And they, they're trying to do this. I think it was easier to market like a black label sized, square bound than to go, all right, we're just doing a straight 128 page or whatever it would be. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. I just think for a smaller company, less of a risk is the phrase I'm looking to go for.
Right. And, obviously arguments could be made if this was a little bit closer to 100 bullets still being a thing. Whatever Azzarello has gone through in recent years. Maybe it would have been easier to sell that way. And I get it. They have a story. They want to sell it. This is the company that's doing it. This is the medium in which they've decided to do it. I wish them the best of luck. This is a very strong first issue. I'm just interested to see how readable issue 2 is going to be. And I can almost guarantee that this is a story that would read better in one fell swoop.
Fair enough. And the last thing that I know and I think these two work together, not counting any one shots they might have, but they were doing that Moonshine, that werewolf bootleggers book, which was really good.
Over at Image, right.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're in the mood for a Western or you miss the creative teams, definitely check this one out.
Right.
So the other book that I read that I was most looking forward to coming out this week was Deadpool and Wolverine World War III #1 from Marvel, of course, written by Joe Kelly with art by Adam Kubert. So it's a very nice looking book. Does this count as an X book that I'm reading?
Ooh,
or do Wolverine and Deadpool transcend the X universe?
Ooh, that's like asking if Robin is a Bat book.
Now, I will say Robin is a Bat book because Batman and even though the last X book that I was reading was Wolverine and the X-Men, Wolverine even got top billing over them. Right. But I definitely think this year, especially with the movie coming out, that Wolverine and Deadpool kind of transcend the X universe. And there's no X in the title. If there was an X in the title, I have no argument. I have nothing to stand on, right?
Is Nightwing a Bat book?
Is Nightwing a Bat book? Yes.
There's no bat in the title.
Don't they have a bat little logo on like the cover or something?
They might. I would say what editor is doing, and that's a deep dive that we can't do, is doing the X books. And if they're doing Deadpool, Wolverine, World War III, then it's an X book.
Okay.
See, this is like a first appearance. I know it when I see it,
All right. So the plot of this story is Wolverine is on the trail of a guy who's killing people. Wolverine gets called in on his flip phone. And of course, with that, he runs afoul of Deadpool. Deadpool leads him on a wild goose chase. that takes him to Siberia, and it turns out the guy who might be killing these people is also looking to do upgrades on people, and it's kind of sort of given away in the solicitations, but Deadpool is one of the people that he's experimenting on, and, obviously Deadpool is looking to find the best version of himself. And is it this? Is it a fight with Wolverine? Or is it some sort of other weird third thing, as it typically always is with a Deadpool story? This is light fun. It's a romp. It's an action comic. I wasn't looking for anything deeper than, fights and, whatever. And that's what I got.
Right. I read this. It was a book. Wolverine and Deadpool were in it. Had a middle, beginning, and a to-be-continued ending. Looked nice. Yeah, so that's my review. Joe, I'm not a Deadpool guy. I've never been a Deadpool guy. So I'm reading this, and there's not even a lot of Deadpool. It's more Wolverine for the book, because
yes, it is definitely more Wolverine than Deadpool
in this book, because Deadpool is half the book, where Wolverine's the whole book. Wolverine's in the whole book, with half of it with Deadpool. And I'm like, okay, but even when Deadpool shows up, I was actually discussing this at the shop today with Beckie and DJ. I think basically I'm an Ambush Bug guy. Ambush Bug did it first and did it right, even though I had a bit of an argument with DJ. He was like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, Ambush Bug was breaking the fourth wall first. And he's like, oh, okay. And I just so I read him, I find him annoying. I don't want to read an annoying person. And he's just constantly on everybody's thing. And as I was reading, and then I was kind of confused by the story. But in the end, I was like, this is not for me. I'm not a Deadpool guy, so this is not for me.
I get you. Joe Kelly Deadpool is going to get me in the door. You know?
I get you.
Yeah. The definitive voice of Deadpool, regardless of what anyone says.
Right.
But I accidentally shared my notes with you, so I can't spring this on you, but you read it anyway, so I'm double springing on you. So this book did one of my comic book pet peeves, not once, not twice, but thrice.
Did they talk in their accent, try to write an accent? I don't remember that in the book.
No.
Okay.
So at the town that they were in, Deadpool got a room at a Sky B&B.
Oh, that's like an Airbnb, but different.
Which was above a Slim Norton's.
Jim Norton's, the comedian?
No.
Jim's
doing great these days. I don't know if you see what Jim's up to these days.
No, but...
Make yourself a note. We'll talk off air.
Okay.
But, Tim Norton's. It's Slim Norton's, right?
That's what it was, yeah.
And Deadpool references the kids doing their click clock dances.
He stole that. I called it the clip clops. Anyway.
These things were not being painted in a negative light. Mm-hmm. It's so frustrating when comics do these sort of things. Refer to it as the thing that we know it is, and you don't have to say Airbnb and we know it's Airbnb. Say the Canadian-only donut shop that is slowly filtering its way across the Niagara border. I'm like, oh, that's Tim Hortons. I know what that is.
Right.
And then click clock dances is inexcusable.
It is? Yeah. Now, could you sum that up? No, okay. The Tim Hortons one you can't, because Wolverine says it. You know what I mean? But maybe Deadpool's just being a goof, talking about Sky Air and B&Bs. But I guess that's that. Do you mind?
They show the sign in the window of the Slim Hortons.
Okay. Do you care when they do okay, so you hate that like a Choco is an Oreo at DC, but what about when they tweak it slightly where you can go all right, this is a competing thing, where it's okay, there's eBay and there's Lex Bay, You know what I mean? And you could always go, well, Lex is trying to put eBay out of business by having his own auction website. Do you know what I mean?
I think if you make it part of a character's plot device,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, just as an example, DC has Big Belly Burger, right?
Right.
And
or
maybe
Jitter's
you
Coffee
could.
House.
What was that?
Jitter's Coffee Chain.
Okay, no. So in the comics, so you have Big Belly Burger in the DC comics. You could make the argument that that's Big Boy, but it's his own unique thing enough that it's different, right?
Right.
But the other thing that DC Comics has is Sun Dollars Comics, as opposed to Starbucks Comics, coffee. Excuse me.
Right.
So Starbucks Coffee as opposed to or Starbucks Coffee, Sun Dollars Coffee, right?
I get the connection.
Okay, so if this was let's say this was Booster Gold, and he's doing a coffee thing that's trying to compete with Starbucks, and he names it something Booster Gold or Booster Goldie. Acceptable. Lex Bay as eBay, acceptable. Where it's you just take the name of the thing and tweak it slightly. No, I hate it.
I get you. And there is a Jitters in the DC comic universe.
Right, because it was initiated in the Flash TV show. Right.
No, but it was first in the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern comics. That was
right, okay,
Radu's thing. So
right, but Jitters is its own thing.
Right, I'm with you.
Jitters isn't a parody of something in the real world.
You like that. But here's the reason I get it. Like, unless they just wanted to make a fake coffee house name, like, that's their own. Because if you ever have to do something with the chain in the comics, like, well, I went to Starbucks or Sun Dollars and I dropped the hot coffee in my lap and I got scalded, you can't use the Starbucks name. That's saying negative things about it. So I kind of always get that, if that makes any sense. And I like Sundollar. I used to keep a list here. I lost it of all the DC ones that would drive you nuts. I found it fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know. And I get that you don't want like, oh, well, they wrote in the comics that by doing TikTok dances, you're whatever.
Right,
something bad happens to you.
Right, you don't want to get the Chinese mad.
But I have, from the Joe Kelly run on Deadpool, of all these crazy pop culture references that he just names straight up what the reference is, or alludes to it enough that you know what he's talking about, instead of just this unoriginal coming up with like, oh, instead of Airbnb, it's Skybnb. I'd like to think that that's some sort of editorial mandate. I'd like to think that's them trying to like make sure that we don't get sued, even though we say like Deadpool just says, I got an Airbnb above the Tim Hortons. That's literally all he says. But It's like, oh, that could be misconstrued because Deadpool is a guy who does things.
Well, what did they say about the Slim Nortons? That it smells like diabetes and what? Like
cinnamon, maybe?
Right, and you're going to, just run that past, Tim Hortons. That's fine.
All right.
And also, all those references that Joe Kelly did, was that before Disney owned Marvel?
Oh, it was way before Disney.
Then that's Marvel. Your answer, right?
Yeah. All right. I still don't like it. It's still a pet peeve of mine. Add it to the list.
Right.
So that's what we read from this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to longboxheroes.com every Tuesday around noon Eastern time, we put up the poll post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week. Whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them sent to your home, however it is you get your books, be forewarned, be forearmed, know what's coming out this week. Todd and I attempt to guess what the other is most looking forward to coming out this week. Todd is currently the lead over me with one correct guess. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at your list, and I'm going to say the book that you're most looking forward to coming out this week is Ain't No Grave #1.
It is. Do you know what that is, or?
I do, because you know what it is because it's a Western book. I know what it is because it's written by Scotty Young.
Right. You're not getting it, though?
I'm a big fan of Scotty Young's art.
Right. Just making sure, because I ended up seeing the thing, and this is the way the solicitation starts, Joe. Ain't no grave. This Unforgiven style journey, I'm buying it. That's all I need to know. Macabre Western, I'm in.
Yeah. You're a sucker for that sort of thing. What can I tell you?
Yeah, it's almost like I have a type, Joe. I'm looking over your list, and is the book you're looking forward to most the Energon Universe #1?
No, it's not, because apparently the way that was solicited was that's the free comic book day thing, but Image also had it as a book for sale. So I'll give you a pass. I'll let you say something else.
Okay, that's fine, because I didn't know. Because I was even talking today, I guess they said some of the stuff was in there from the free comic book day, but there was more. So that's kind of why I did it. So looking over it, is the book you're looking for? I don't know. All these are just also rans. Captain America 9. I'm going to lose, so.
That's actually correct.
Oh, I nailed it, Joe.
Yes. It's the beginning of a new story arc.
Okay.
They did a 6-issue, then they did a 2-issue one. I didn't love it. But this is from at least the solicitation of it, getting back to what the first 6 issues were about.
Right, setting up the Doomsday Prophecy in those 2 issues.
Yep.
I will say, looking over both our lists, I'm glad, and I kind of thought that was the way they were doing it, was, like how they dropped Rook Exodus, or Exodus Rook, and Redcoat and Geiger all in 1 week, which I thought was a good thing to just drop for the Ghost Machine thing. Now they're going to spread the books out, so you don't buy them each week, you know what I mean? Or you don't get all 3 every week. And I'm like, I like that idea. I see what you're doing now. You wanted to have that big splash where you could promote all 3 in 1 week, and now make sure they don't all land on the same shipping week. And I'm like, I think that was the way to go with that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, be sure to check out past episodes of this show, past episodes of Longbox Heroes After Dark, and our current ongoing Todd and Joe Have Issues, as we are rereading all of Gail Simone's Secret Six. We are on issue 2 of the ongoing series, written, of course, by Gail Simone. As mentioned before, art by Nicola Scott. It is the same creative team. We picked up from the last issue where Batman knows that the Six are on their mission to break Tarantula out of Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
And while the Six, actually 4, because we're still not introduced to who the 6th person of the team is, and Catman's job is to run interference with Batman.
Yes, sir.
So you got your 2 stories going on there, 3 stories if you pick up with the stuff at the end, with Junior essentially sicking all of the villains on the Six once they have broken Tarantula out of jail. But you get like the duality of what Gail's writing is and can be with this story, where you get a little bit more of a serious bent with the Batman Catman stuff, even though there's the through line of what Catman smells around Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And the payoff to that is definitely fun. And then, of course, we have the 4 members of the Six breaking into Alcatraz to break out Tarantula, as mentioned. And I don't know if we get to learn a little bit more of Bane's motivation, but maybe Bane finds a motivation. And this is like, we talked last week about how this is the beginning of the redemption of Bane.
Mm-hmm.
I am so excited to relive this journey.
Yep, because I like when they're talking and Scandal's handling things, and Bane's like, interesting. I think, I know what this young lady needs, and Deadshot's like, she don't fly your way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you understand it. She's like, no. It's like, that's a sad woman. She needs the firm, like, guidance of a father. And I'm like, ooh, I remember that, and I'm like, yeah, Bane and the Scandal dynamic, I'm like, is really interesting. And I will also say this. I think this is the true beginning of the best of Ragdoll.
Yes.
Like, up to this point, Ragdoll's been the fun, goofy comic relief with a hint of, like, you know, creepiness. But this is where to me, this is the baseball episode of The Simpsons for Ragdoll. Like, Ragdoll writing lines where she writes, and we've said we love Gail's dialogue in this, so that's not something I'm saying. But this is like, we're here, try not to get killed. There's a lot of countermeasures. And he's like, if I'd known we might die, I would have done something filthy enough to shame the heavens as my last act. We're going to get a lot more of this Ragdoll as the series goes on. Like, because up to this point, he was like, oh, I just have monkeys dressed as the Secret Six. I have this. And this is her fleshing out Ragdoll fantastically. And I'm all for it, Joe. Absolutely all for it.
And I said it before, if it was a different world and the cards were played right, and, you know, you had even mentioned earlier in this episode how you find Deadpool annoying for the most part. I think because Deadpool's dialogue is supposed to be wacky for the sake of wackiness, whereas I think Ragdoll's dialogue, when written by Gail, I think she knew several people like this.
Or she at least met them at cons.
Yes, and a lot of that is based on real-world experience. You mentioned the part about shaming the heavens. Their plan to break into Alcatraz because it's all superhumans. There's no barbed wire. There's no exterior thing because, like, what's barbed wire going to do to a superhero person? And their plan is to just have Bane throw Scandal over the wall. And Ragdoll steps in and is like, excuse me, I'm the lightest member of the team. And he's like, I weigh a grand total of 73 pounds. May I ask what you weigh? You could use your pre-birthday cake weight if you'd like.
That's a great line.
And it's like, no, Ragdoll wants to be thrown over the wall, you know? And then again, of course, he's also put over as someone who's very vicious and very deadly, but also like this strangely quirky comedic character that like feels like this is a person, you know?
Right, a very broken person.
Yes.
Not that everybody else on the Six isn't broken, but I do like that he's following the rules of these like innocents, if you will, that are running the thing. Because he comes in, he's like, he smacks the crap out of them all, busts them all up, but then he even gives them nice tips on how to get blood out of clothing. So if he's giving them tips on how to get blood out of clothing, he hasn't killed anybody, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? So he's following Catman's rules. No innocence, you know? So very interesting character.
We also learned that because it's immoral, Bane is no longer using venom.
That
or chicken and the DC Comics version of chicken and rice, let's say.
Yeah, beat me to it. Yeah. But anyway, I remember all the way back when I read this the first time that they're in that prison and they're like, all right, unleash it, Bane. He's like, I'm off. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. It's like immoral. And I'm like, Bane without venom? Like, what are we doing here? And like, it works. You know what I mean? Like, what they're doing with him, as we say, is fantastic. And I absolutely love it. And I just want to touch on the one thing that you said before about how now Junior is they're going after to break out Tarantula, who's going to get the card, who everybody we've established in this issue, Batman talking to Catwoman, that everybody's going to want, whether they believe or know if it's real or not. We don't know what the card is. But in the end, it comes back to the heart of the original Secret Six, or the villains united. It's the Six versus the Society of Supervillains, but not that anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like the illusion of change, but it works. It's not cheap, if that makes any sense. It's, yes. All right, that's what I loved about this book 4. It was us against the other villains and the heroes to an extent, but they give us another reason to do that rodeo again, and I'm fine with it.
We get that 2/3 page at the end where all the villains are there to take Junior's offer. We see some familiar faces, some new faces. you know, as you mentioned, it's a way to kind of fit you back into that previous, you know, 12 issues or whatever it was that we'd gotten through the Villains United stuff, the Secret Six miniseries, and now to this, to, you know, keep that kind of storyline alive with these characters. And the art is beautiful. Nicola Scott art is in this is beautiful. You know, I just wanted to kind of come back to the Bane stuff, of course. So this is maybe another issue where we talked about a couple issues ago, maybe during Birds of Prey stuff, that if you were to look at the six as they are here, you know, obviously Bane now is new, but this is almost a completely different Bane than what had been post Nightfall. But Deadshot was probably the most fleshed out of all these characters, and Deadshot he's now, at least in these two issues, he's almost relegated to comic relief. Mm-hmm. He gets to be the one to make a quippy one-liner while the other characters are doing stuff. Not to say that he's not doing stuff. He's killing, he's doing the missions, he's everything else. But all the other characters are getting the character development. They're getting that world building that Deadshot already has. So he's kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit.
Right, but it's also not out of character for him to be quippy. So it's not like it's the Avengers under Bendis. You know what I mean? So
right, it doesn't feel odd, but obviously he has maybe 5 word balloons the whole issue, maybe.
Right, but to be fair, once again, the first issue just concentrated mostly on. There was a lot of Deadshot and or Catman for the first half of that issue, just talking back and forth. Now it's you're in an ensemble book. Sometimes you got to take a back seat.
Yeah, that's
somebody. There's 6 people. All right, we're at 5 only so far, but you bring Tarantula in because you're kidnapping her. It's only so many word balloons.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But all that being said, this is still a really good book, and I'm so excited to reread this, Yeah,
it's sneaky good, Joe.
Yeah. So while you're over... so the only other thing that we have to just mention real quick before we finish off with the main plugs and the Patreon and everything else like that is the new episode of Doctor Who drops this weekend, right?
Yeah, I believe actually on a Friday it'll be out.
Mm-hmm. Us Americans get to watch it before the UK people, right?
The real fans of Doctor Who, the Americans. America. Doctor Who fans. America.
So we'll be talking about that next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I want all your wife's notes,
I will. I'll get her. I'll make sure to get her thoughts here as well,
There you go.
But of course you could support the show several different ways. You can make any and all of your eBay purchases through our eBay affiliate link. This page contains affiliate links for eBay. We may receive a small commission on purchases you make. You could use the affiliate link anytime you want to buy anything on eBay and support us at the same time.
Yeah.
You could also support us by making a purchase through our TeePublic store. The sale is going on from now, as you listen to this, until Sunday, 35% off any and all designs that are over there, whether it be designs inspired by this show, designs inspired by After Dark, soon-to-be-named Network. A bunch of the other shows in the network have shirts in our store, designs in our store, not just shirts, cell phone covers, notebooks, all sorts of things, festive throws, tapestries, pillows, all sorts of things. 35% off from now until Sunday. But of course, the best and greatest way to support us is by signing up for the Patreon. Patreon.com/Longbox Heroes. For as little as $1 a month, you get 2 bonus shows every month from Todd and myself. One is Comic Book Oddities, where we look at some of the maybe more maligned, maybe forgotten pilots that were failed, TV movies that went nowhere, a pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe world of comic book movies and media. We just came off recording and releasing Superman 3, where we redeem that movie and talk about one of the greatest scenes in all of movie history, not just comic book movie history.
Mm-hmm.
And we just did Previewing the Past for May of 1994. Had a lot of fun with that one, as 0 Hour is here. And a lot of the previews is about 0 Hour. and a lot of our discussion is about 0 hour DC events and the kind.
Right. Well, and definitely there's a great bit in there where there's several pages of the description of 0 hour. And if you want to hear it read by a person with an announcer's voice, this is not the show for you. Joe did it.
Oh my goodness.
No, it was fantastic. There's that great bit where you're giving it the push, getting it over, Joe. And I'm like, I want to buy 0 hour again.
If I was a better podcaster and a better promoter of said podcaster, I would have had that be the clip that we release out, you know? I could probably go and change it, but I don't know. I got other stuff to do.
You're a busy man. I'm
a very busy man.
I'd go do it, but I don't have the keys to the Patreon. So.
You do. You just don't realize you do.
Oh, okay.
Of course, you know, you get that at any level. $5 a month is going to get you the shows 2 weeks before everyone else. It's also going to get you After Dark 2 days before everyone else. So you can listen to the shows in the correct listening order. And as a goof, not a goof, maybe a bit, not a bit. There's a new tier up there. $100 a month is going to get you everything. But it's also going to get you the stuff that gets cut out of the podcast that's too hot and salacious for anyone to hear. But if you pay $100, you get it.
Yeah, American, other countries, it don't matter. You know, we'll take 100 whatevers.
We'll take whatever you got. At any level, of course, you're going to get this full scans of those previews catalogs, expertly done, high-quality scans, all the way back to 1990 catalogs. If you listen to After Dark this week, you'll hear... the extension got renewed, did Previewing the Past for another 3 seasons at least. So,
oh my goodness.
Batten down the hatches. Anything else that we have to discuss and cover before we wrap a bow on this week's episode, Mr. Todd?
I think we're good.
Perfect. This was episode 709 of Longbox Heroes. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.